Good morning, good afternoon, and welcome to sunny Sarasota, Florida. Not really. But as always, we are here on Random Trek. I am your faithful ship's captain, Commander Christopher Ingle. Joined as always by my first officer, the man who clearly is an advocate for diabetes and for oatmeal, Commander Brennan, the mystical Mar. Brennan, how you doing?
It's diabetes.
Diabetes.
Yeah,
Oh, did you know that he was the youngest of the primary cast members?
he's only 50.
Yeah, that's crazy. Anyway, we here on movie night on the ship are taking a look at the 1985 sci-fi classic Ron Howard directed Cocoon, which is a first for both Brennan and our special guest. We had her on when it came to batteries not included, and I figured, well, we've got another, Cronin Tandy combination. Let's have her on again. Either it's the ship's counselor, Lisa.
Hi.
So, Lisa, this was your first time watching it. Um, what did you think?
Another beautiful movie.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely, Brennan, it was your first too.
Yeah, and we did batteries not included, the three of us 2 months
Mhm.
ago.
Yeah.
This has very much a similar feeling.
Mm-hmm. And yet it was
It
done before.
yeah, it's part of that like post ET, slightly sentimental, family friendly sci-fi movies
Mm-hmm.
with that Spielbergian touch.
Yep. And this kind of has a weird history unto itself as they were bringing it in.
Yeah,
It's a Ron Howard film that wasn't supposed to be a Ron Howard film.
nope.
This was supposed to be a Zemeckis film.
Yeah, yeah.
But we'll get into all of that. But a lot of this going into it. But being movie night, I turn the con over to Brennan.
All right, thank you, Captain. I do think it's quite ironic that you made a Steve Gutenberg joke week, and now we're got a movie with Steve.
Mm-hmm.
Another movie with Steve Gutenberg. Yes, it is the 1985 classic Cocoon, directed, of course, by young Ronnie Howard. He seemed to have a thing about water, because he did Splash and he did this movie.
Mm-hmm.
He's got something about water going on in his stories. With an incredible cast of some really significant names from the golden age of Hollywood all the way up to the 1980s.
Mm-hmm.
So the story is interesting. It's a strange group of people, led, of course, by the great Brian Dennehy, charter a boat from Captain Steve Gutenberg to go out in the ocean and pick up some strange boulder-shaped objects off the ocean floor. And they bring them back to this retirement community in St. Petersburg, Florida, where a group of elderly folk are, living their lives. Well, three of them, the great Don Amici, Hume Cronin, and Wilford Brimley, stumble across a swimming pool where these strange visitors had put the rocks. As these three men start swimming in the pool, they begin to feel more youthful and energetic. Basically, a fountain of youth. And the story goes from there. So, our first point is the story. Lisa, what did you think of the overall story of this film?
I think the story was very, for its time, it was very unique.
Mhm. Yeah, I mean, it's a weird idea, isn't it? Or
Y-
a different idea.
Yeah, you hadn't seen anything quite like it before.
Mhm. Yes, and the movie is called Cocoon because these rocks are cocoons for an ancient race of aliens.
Right.
Yeah,
And and it you hadn't seen anything where the aliens were, I think the word's benevolent, where they weren't trying to kill you or trying to
yeah,
do anything where, right, where they were nice and feeling and caring, and so it was something interesting to watch.
yeah, and it was interesting that the main characters are elderly people. That's interesting.
Right, definitely.
That's unique. Yeah, Captain Ingle, what did you think overall the story of this film?
It's such a nice story, and um it just brings up so much hope and sadness and joy, and because this story is all about life, and what would you do to keep it?
Yeah,
What would you do? And mistakes are made, joys are made. I mean, there's so much beauty in this film. It really is not a standard science fiction film. This is so different. In fact, it reminds me very much of something that would be a little more Twilight Zone or Outer Limitsy,
yeah, yeah.
in a
Right,
good way. In a good way.
right, but it also makes a point that life in your golden years doesn't have to just stop.
Right.
Mm.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that's
That
a good point.
can still be lived in your golden years.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And this story is just absolutely beautiful. And you know, I've worked in elderly homes. I've seen what they are talking about here. And so this story is nice that you don't have to be what everyone expects. Your
Mm-hmm.
life is still possible. And no matter what age you are, there are still plenty of possibilities out there for you.
Yeah, it's a beautiful idea, and but it's also an interesting idea because you have this idea that they are gaining life because of the aliens
Hmm.
at the cost of the aliens' energy. It's a very unique idea of the sense of like, it's wonderful and you're right. What would you do to keep that vitality? And it's an interesting twist that it's kind of at the cost of someone else's.
Right. It's a very give or take, a give and take type thing.
Yeah, and because this is a Star Trek podcast, we deal with these ethical questions all the time in Star Trek.
Hmm.
And this is another one of those ethical conundrums.
You think I was thinking too of Star Trek Insurrection,
Mhm.
and we're dealing with the Fountain of Youth here.
Yeah,
This is exactly what we're dealing with, and they were dealing with the same issue. It's done a little bit differently, but nonetheless, what would you do to stay young? Would you be
yeah.
willing to sacrifice anything to do that? What is the cost of doing that? Um, and this is just done so beautifully, and you see the repercussions of it in the film. We'll get into it because there was one moment. Oh, my heart broke. Heart
Oh,
broke.
yeah, I think I know what movie you're talking about.
Yeah.
Yeah,
So,
it got
uh,
me too.
yeah.
It's a beautiful story and it's a lot of fun too in many ways
Mhm.
to see these three old guys just like cut loose. It's great. I mean, and
And
that brings
there's
us. Oh, go ahead, Lisa.
there's so many love stories going on all at once
Yeah,
too.
yeah,
Not just of the young couple, but the three older couples. No, four older couples
yeah.
as well.
That's right. The four older couples. Yeah,
Mhm.
yeah. It is nice to see a love story involving old people, elderly people. That's nice to see on the screen. But usually it's the young people. But romance doesn't end when you're old either.
Mhm.
Um,
Right.
so that brings us to our incredible incredible cast. Let me just read off some of the names here because it's really impressive. Don Amici, Wilford Brimley, Kim Cronin, Ryan Dennehy, Jack Guilford, Steve Guttenberg, Maureen Stapleton, Jessica Tandy, Gwen Verdon, Barrett Oliver. I mean, look at these names.
These are golden
It,
age actors.
it is like,
Yeah.
I mean, you've got these actors from the golden age of Hollywood. And then you have young Barrett Oliver, who many of our age will remember as Bastion in the Never-Ending Story,
Mhm.
which, is one of the great nostalgic films of our youth.
The first Bastion, if anybody.
Yes, the first one.
Right.
Not the other two.
Hey, I'm a Jonathan Brandis guy, okay?
John the Randis is pretty good. But you have these like actors who are legendary. I
Yeah.
mean, Jessica Tandy, Kim Cronin. I mean, 2 months ago we did a movie with the two of them,
Hmm.
and here they are again. And it's funny, Gwen Verdon, who many of you will remember, was the wife of uh, I'm drawing a blank. Uh, oh, that jazz,
Uh,
that guy.
which one? Fosse?
Bob Fosse, yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
He was his like wife and dancing partner,
Hmm.
and still just as beautiful as ever in this movie, I
She
think.
was the original Roxy Hart in Chicago.
Yes, that's right, she was.
So I mean, like you're right. These
And she was
guys,
in Anything Goes.
these guys are huge.
Uh,
All of
yeah,
these names.
and Wilford Brimley, who oddly enough was quite younger than his fellow stars. Obviously, he is very familiar to audiences, and it's interesting to look at this list and see the connections to great science fiction movies. In a very small role, you have Linda Harrison as the boy's mother, and many of you will remember she was Nova in the original Planet of the Apes.
Hmm.
You have Barrett Oliver, who of course is in The Never-Ending Story. You have a couple of roles with the Howard family, with Clint Howard as one of the obnoxious orderlies who gets punched out, and I thought that was great.
Hmm.
And Rance Howard, Ron Howard's dad, playing one of the police. Yeah, that you have, get this, Raquel Welch's daughter
That one shocked me.
is in this. I mean, I kept looking, the actress Tawny Welch, I kept looking at her and I said, why does she look so familiar? And then I read, oh, she's Raquel Welch's daughter. Okay, that explains it.
Yeah.
But she looks a lot like her mom. And then, of course, you had Jessica Tandy and Hugh Cronin, who were in Batteries Not Included. You had Wilford Brimley, who was in The Thing and the Ewok movies in the 80s. And just an incredible cast of actors. And, of course, Brian Dennehy playing a very different role than he usually played back then.
Hmm.
Many of you will remember that Dennehy was the evil Sheriff Teasel in First Flight, the
Hmm.
first Rambo film. So this is a cast. I mean, trying to imagine a young Ron Howard directing legends from Hollywood history is like, wow, that is
He must
amazing.
have he must have been intimidated.
Yeah, I agree. I agree. So this is an ensemble thing. Oh, and I forgot to mention, of course, Steve Guttenberg. You can't have an 80s movie without Steve Gutenberg.
Well, you also forget the most important actor in any Ron Howard film and our true Star Trek connection, Mr. Clint Howard.
Yes, Clint Howard.
Gotta have Clint Howard in there.
Yep. So, uh, this is an ensemble film. So, Captain Engel, what do you think of the chemistry and the just this big cast?
It was such a joy to watch them.
Mm,
And in the beginning, you see this sense of the humdrum happening.
mm,
There's sickness, there's near the end of life, there's we're playing shuffleboard, we're going to the dancing, they're doing all the things you would expect like retired old folks to do in Florida. Like the stereotypes are all there. And then you get these three guys who are sneaking over and around fences to get into a swimming pool. These three ornery gentlemen.
Three rascals.
Yeah, and I love that. I love just that they're just trying to get a little young and they wanted the private swimming pool, and I don't blame them at all. But the chemistry works so well. Every actor and actress that they have paired together works really well here too. They
Yeah.
pair off very well with them. In fact, some interesting turns too from Cronin. Cronin surprised me in this movie. So it's charming. And then you've got Gutenberg. Gutenberg can be many things.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
You never really know what Gutenberg you're going to get. And going into this, you think maybe he's going to be a little grifty, a little, he's got a dirty boat, kind of thing. But no, he's a good guy. He's a peeping Tom, but
Well, yeah.
he's a good guy at heart. That's the most important thing.
Yeah.
And the rest of the cast just really go in to support that, and the chemistry is absolutely the primary key here. That and the special effects. We'll get to the special effects. But you had to have these people, and you had to care about them. I cared what happened to these people
Mhm.
as they were going through this, and that was the key. So I think that's the sign of good chemistry.
I agree. Lisa, what do you think about this ensemble?
I think, like you said, that everybody fit together really, really well. I think they put together just the right people with the right people. I think, um, you know, they all just worked together really well. The old guys worked together, got just great. I mean, if you'd have put any other three guys together, I don't think it would have worked together. Just
Mm,
the
mm.
even the fourth old guy, him being the different odd guy out, the way it
Bernie,
was, yeah,
Bernie, yeah,
the odd guy out that he was, if he hadn't been the way that he was, it wouldn't have worked the way it did.
yeah,
Um, it wouldn't have told the story the way that it did.
yeah. No, I agree. And Bernie and Rose, it's like, oh my gosh. Chris, you
Yeah,
mentioned it up top on the show.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, talk about tragic.
Yeah.
heartbreaking.
Oh my gosh. That's a hard-hitting moment.
Him sitting there. And first of all, this guy is, he's been in the waters, but he carries her
Yeah,
all the way over there and is like, help me, please, please,
yeah.
please.
And Brian Denny says, I
I
can't.
can't.
So,
There's nothing I could do.
I mean, well, it's great because it's beautifully written scene, beautifully heartbreaking, but I also love Dennehy's delivery.
Mm-hmm.
We're very used to seeing Brian Dennehy as a villain.
Mm-hmm.
He's this big, tall, barrel-chested guy. He's kind of intimidating, but he plays a very soft-spoken character in this. He's very defensive of the cocoons, but that moment he's like, I feel bad I have to say this, but I can't do anything for you. And
Right.
I mean, the great thing about these kind of movies, these movies that I call them Spielbergian movies, even though Spielberg may not have been involved with this one. There's a lot of like fun and humor
Hmm.
and beauty and magic, but there's also some sad stuff. They're not afraid of going into that.
Being that this film was to be a Zemeckis project, it's
Mhm.
not a far stretch of the imagination in a different reality to imagine Spielberg doing this.
Yeah,
And
it
it's
has that
not,
feel.
it is not the last time that Ron Howard will come in to save the day on something that's like this.
Yeah,
Ron Howard coming in, that's someone, this is the guy you asked to save the day. Apollo 13, Ron Howard was not the initial choice to do that. He
Solo,
got it, and that was the right thing to do.
Solo was so.
Solo. So yeah, didn't even start filming it. So absolutely, and just the compassion and um, definitely the compassion. You could see it. Like I imagine if I were him, I would imagine he's thinking of people that he's known, grandparents that he's had.
Mhm.
Like what would they have, and then the choice that they have in the end as well. That always surprises me, that choice, despite what what we do to the aliens, and we ruin this for them.
It's true.
We have, or they had the wisdom to go, you know what, you're just children. In the end, you're galactically children, but we'd like to offer you an opportunity here.
Yeah,
Come with us, learn a lot. You're going to be students, you're going to have to learn all over again, but at the same time we can learn so much from you.
yeah.
That's wisdom.
Um, there's a lot of characters here, but I think I'll cut to the chase and say that Don Amici won the Oscar for Best Supporting Actor.
That was the shock of the year.
Yes,
No one expected this because Amici got nominated and wasn't nominated in anything in any previous nominations for this film. So it wasn't expected that he was going to win it. It's very rare that someone gets a nomination out of the blue, especially for an Oscar, and then wins.
and especially for like a sci-fi family film.
Oh, sci-fi never gets recognized, I think, except in the technical categories.
Yeah, and this did also win Best Visual Effects. We'll get to that.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, Don Amici. So he's kind of our main character.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, there's a lot of characters here.
Yeah,
I gotta say, I absolutely love his romance with Gwen Thornton.
they
I
are so
love that he
cute.
shows up at the door wearing a nice suit with some flowers. I mean, he's still a romantic. You know, he's still got that kind of. I can imagine him. It's like a young Navy guy in World War II, hanging out at a club, flirting with cute ladies. I could
He's
imagine that.
he's still full of himself too.
Yes, he's full of himself. So, to focus on him, Lisa, what did you think of Don Amici in this film?
He's 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 one of the ones he's they go over the fence, they do they go swimming. He's not got the I'm old, I'm done, I'm no, he's still full of life.
Mm.
Even though
He's
he's the one still at risk the most.
Yes, yes.
he's still full of life. He's still going for it. He's still doing everything he can to keep life going.
Hmm.
He's not afraid. The only thing that he was afraid of in the beginning was, I think, her,
Yeah.
because he wasn't going after her in the beginning.
Hmm.
It wasn't until after their first swim in the pool with the cocoons
Hmm.
that he
Sort of,
chose to go after her.
sort of gave them the courage.
Right.
Yeah, I mean, and he's just so sweet. And the scene where he's dancing with her and he's doing the tango, and
Yeah,
yeah, it's just so much fun.
and then it's all about the fun
Hmm.
and enjoying the time that he has with her.
Yeah, and he's got some great dialogue. I mean, the script here. which, by the way, to point out, even though they didn't get Oscar nominations, the script was nominated for a Writers Guild of America award, and
Wow.
Ron Howard was nominated for a Directors Guild award. But I love, particularly with Don Amici, that very snappy 1940s style dialogue. I absolutely love that. And his delivery of every line is right on. Chris, what did you think about Don Amici?
He's a joy, and there's a reason he won the Oscar. It was
Mm-hmm.
absolutely the heart and soul, and it worked. Um, I can't say anything more. This was just a kind and beautiful performance. I bought his sincerity, but you can see that this is a man on death's door.
Mm-hmm.
His leukemia is gonna kill him. He knows that. We're set up with that. And then, they start swimming, and then it's in remission. And like, I have a new lease on life. I can't believe this.
Mm-hmm.
And spoiler alert, there is a sequel and it comes back. So it's a part with him, it stays with him, but he never lets it utterly destroy him.
Mm-hmm.
I love the moment too when they were done bowling and they're excited
Mm-hmm.
and they all decide, you know what, no, we need to go home. It's
Yeah.
time. With us, you know what, we need to rest a little bit.
Mm-hmm.
And he was one of the ones that was like, you know what, we need to. And the look on his face as Hume Cronin's looking in on him, there was almost a look of disappointment, like he knew what he was about to do.
Mm.
That is so subtle,
Yeah.
so powerful.
I mean, you see why he won the Oscar. It's right there.
Yep.
Um, and like I said, great cast here. Steve Gutenberg is delightfully goofy as usual. His relation, I really thought his relationship with Kitty was quite sweet.
Mm-hmm.
What did you think of that one, Chris?
You know what? No, I'll keep it short and sweet. All the relationships are adorable.
Yes.
They just each have their own little charms,
Mm-hmm.
and I enjoy that so much. I love that each of them kind of has their own characteristic that works. Amici is the bachelor who's afraid to go after that one last love. Cronin is the guy who he just can't keep it in his pants. Just can't do it.
Unfortunately, no.
Just get and then Wilford Brimley, I love how he is the consummate family man.
Oh, yes.
He's loyal to his wife, loyal to his grandkid, loyal to the relationship between him and his grandson. That is
Oh,
so
yes.
good.
Yeah, Barrett Oliver and Wilford Brimley are
Yes.
terrific in
They
this.
and
Yes.
Yes.
Keith, they have the best scene.
Mm-hmm.
That scene fishing when
The
he's
fishing
telling
scene,
him I'm not
yes.
coming back. Heartbreak when you watch that kid.
Oh, gosh.
Oh, and what they're going through, and it's fabulous. So each one of them has this powerful, unique personality that really comes out to shine, and it's exemplified by the power of the waters.
Mhm. You know, it's funny. I've always liked Wilford Brimley because he reminds me of my own grandfather.
Mhm.
My dad's dad is a lot like Wilford Brimley, even down to the mustache. But it, it, you're right. The scenes with him and Barrett Oliver are terrific, and even though Barrett doesn't have a lot to do in this film, the scenes with him make a huge impact.
Mhm.
Particularly at the end when he jumps in the water so they can get away.
He saved his
Yes.
grandfather.
Yes, he did.
That's maturity
It's
right there.
beautiful.
Yeah.
So yeah, this is a wonderful cast, and of course the greatest like power couple of acting, Ewan Cronin and Jessica Tandy. Jessica Tandy. This is interesting. Was the original Blanche Dubois on stage in A Streetcar Named Desire. And she was quite a powerhouse. And Yeah, oddly enough, they didn't cast her in the movie, A Streetcar. They wanted a name, so they went with Vivian Lee. And Vivian Lee is terrific in the film. But it would have been interesting to see Jessica Tandy in that movie. But regardless, Tandy had like a resurgence in the 80s. She had Batteries Not Included, she had this film, and of course her Oscar win in Driving Miss Daisy. And she was also in Fried Green Tomatoes. And it's interesting to see these like golden age of Hollywood actors get this resurgence. It's really extraordinary. So that's our cast. And we come now to the screenplay. It's an interesting screenplay because there are moments that are very much like the 1940s kind of films, particularly Don Amici. He feels very. He's got that snappy dialogue. Otherwise, it's not to me a. It's not that the dialogue is necessarily super important in the film. I mean, it reminds me a bit of E.T. in the sense that the dialogue is there, but in many ways you can almost tell the story without that. But there are these incredible moments of conversation in the film that really hit hard. So, Lisa, what do you think about the screenplay of this film overall?
I think like you said, there are some parts where the dialogue it's not needed at all, and then there's other parts that it hits so to the point and so poignantly that it is so emotional.
Mm-hmm.
In both parts, whether it needs dialogue or not, it's perfect.
Mm.
Because like the fishing,
Oh, yes.
the dialogue that goes on there,
Mm-hmm. It's
and
very like
then
naturalistic. It just feels like,
it's very
yeah.
natural. It's that scene is so perfect. I almost cried. And
Mm.
then watching the boy jump to the boat and then jump from the boat,
Yeah, oh yeah.
I almost cried again there.
Oh yeah.
And honestly, not a lot of movies move me.
Mm.
So to get to that point that especially a lot of the older movies, to still be able to do that today
Yeah.
says a lot.
Yeah, no, I agree. It's very well said. And I like how the dialogue is very to the point.
Yes, it definitely
Like, it's
is.
not flowery. It's very, I mean, the fishing scene.
He
That's
cuts,
very direct dialogue.
yes, he cuts straight to the chase with the boy. He doesn't talk above him, he doesn't talk below him, he talks straight to him, and
Mm-hmm.
there's no, he cuts straight to the chase. There's no beating around the bush, no nothing, and he talks into a man to man.
Mm-hmm. I think that's what makes Wilford Brimley or made him such a great actor. Is in every movie he was in, he was straight to the point. He didn't butter things up. He just went right for it.
Right.
Yeah, I mean, that scene is a great example of this is a very, what you might call minimalistic screenplay. There's not a lot of flowery speeches or anything like that.
No, but they gave him the chance to show affection too. And
Yes,
that was the great thing about that.
yes.
He he showed affection in a way that all grandparents would show affection.
Hmm. Yeah, he's, like I said, he's very much like my grandfather, and my grandfather could be kind of gruff, like both were Billy. but he could also be extremely loving.
Right.
Chris, what do you think about the screenplay of this film?
It is a simple idea,
Hmm.
and it's really expressed fairly well. They don't give it away right away. You've got a little bit of mystery in there. But when they do, they just, there aren't a lot more questions about it. It's just, oh, these aliens in these waters give us life. Okay. And the other aliens could easily, or the Antarians could have been like, you know what? Get out. We don't want you here. But no, it was, you know what? We will share. We will. Let's work together. And for a little bit there was a cohesion between the two. And so I see that as a natural progression in the writing is, people coming together, something very different than we normally get in sci-fi writing.
Hmm.
Most sci-fi films make us out either the aliens are going to be the absolute bad guys or we're going to be the absolute bad guys.
Mm.
Next in next month's movie, we are the
Ah,
absolute bad guys.
yes.
We are. In this movie, there is no absolute. Well, we are for a minute, and then we're forgiven. We're given an opportunity to
Yeah,
expand ourselves. That's powerful writing when you can look beyond the stereotypes and you can ask the kind of questions that we want to do. What would you do? What would you be willing to give up to live forever?
yeah,
Yes. But there's always that we all make mistakes.
yeah,
Because even the head Antarian says, I've made some terrible mistakes. But we all make mistakes.
yeah. I love that that Denny's character. He's upset, yes, but he's not angry. He doesn't blame us. He's just like, you know what? You didn't know what you were doing, and we're okay with that. And it's also, in a way, kind of sad for the Antarians because they realize they cannot bring those people in cocoons back to their planet. But nonetheless, they're willing to be forgiving. And in some sci-fi movies, it would be humans make a mistake and the aliens are mad and they destroy us all. This is about an alien who's like, they've been around for thousands of years. So I think they understand compassion more than we do. And that's a beautiful bit of writing. And we come to the music. Uh, who better to score a sentimental sci-fi film than the great James Horner? Um, the score to me is pretty good, though it's not necessarily a super memorable score. But it does have the ingredient that I enjoy about these movies, and that's movie magic. The scenes that are very like supernatural and, or should I say, like wonderfully beautiful and wonderfully like movie magic scenes, he underscores with the right theme to give it that lift to it, that and give it that emotion, give it that. I mean, the moments that kind of make me, you know, tear up are when his score kind of goes like pretty hard, and it's a great. It's a great. It's not necessarily a memorable melody, but the feeling it conveys, it's absolutely there. Chris, what did you think of James Horner's work here?
I will be honest, I love the score, but I also found it to be a bit derivative. And I sat there going,
Mm.
why do I feel like I've heard this before? I sat there the whole time listening to the music, especially during the escape, going, why have I heard this before? Why have I heard this before? The year before, what movie did we get from James Horner as well? Star Trek 3, The Search for Spock.
Yeah, yes, yes.
It has so many elements, both of Star Trek 2 and Star Trek 3. There are elements of the wonderful and the mystical in this, and coming especially just off of Search for Spock, it does not surprise me that this was James Horner's score.
Yeah. Anyway, he was a little bit derivative in the 80s of his own work.
Well, and it's not the end of this because remember, and connecting it together, he comes back and he does Batteries Not Included in '87.
Yes.
And he must have been liked because he also did the score for Cocoon the Return, and Howard liked him because he did Willow.
And he did Aliens.
Aliens, yeah.
So,
Like sci-fi was his thing.
let's just say he was very busy in the 80s.
Yes.
But yeah, I mean, what did you feel about kind of the emotional underscoring of the scenes?
It hit all the right notes, pun
Mm-hmm.
intended, that it needed to. It was exciting, it was sad, it was melancholy, it was, there are points where it's hopeless, and you could feel that, and it's
Mm-hmm.
supposed to be, and he knows exactly where to pick it up.
And also where not to put music.
That's true. And then when we're using things that are not scored,
Mm-hmm.
also tying in the music of the golden age.
Oh,
Talking the
yes.
30s and the 40s. Great touch. I actually always looked forward to the different music that they were bringing in from the 30s and 40s. I couldn't begin to count out what they used. But there's quite a bit of it in the background, especially in the dance hall scene. You hear it quite a bit. So
Yeah, it gives
I
it a very nostalgic kind of throwback in those scenes.
Mhm. Yep.
Lisa, what did you think about the score?
I think he put in just the right amount, right amount of the big band, right amount of, the older stuff. And I think the like Chris was saying, it moved where it was supposed to move, and it didn't where it wasn't supposed to, and you felt where you were supposed to feel, and didn't where you weren't supposed to, and it was just so that you didn't know it was there, if that
Mm-hmm.
makes sense.
Yeah, and it's a good point because if you're thinking about it, then maybe it's not doing its job. If you just go with it, then it is
Because
doing its
if
job.
you have to think about the music actually being there,
Mm-hmm.
unless it's right in your face, like the dance hall scenes or the things like that, it's too much.
Mm-hmm.
Unless it's a dance hall scene or you're in, a bar scene or something like that where it's like right in your face and you know that there's music there.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, if it makes you feel something or then great, it's doing its job.
Mm-hmm.
But I think it did what it needed to do where it needed to do it.
Mm-hmm. Well said. I've always loved movie music, and I think it's because of James Horner. I think I saw The Land Before Time when I was like 3, and his score in there was so powerful. That's probably why I like movie music. All right, we come to the visual effects, our final chapter. Um, it won the Oscar for Best Visual Effects. I like the visual effects because they have that cheesy 80s feel. And I don't mean that in a negative way. I mean that in a movie magic kind of way. And a sense of, yeah, maybe sometimes you kind of sense the how they're being done. But there's something just so delightfully charming about those old-fashioned 80s effects. And mind you, we had a couple of people from Star Wars work on this. The great Ken Ralston and the great Ralph McQuarrie. And it really I think fits the tone that this movie is aiming for. Chris, what are your thoughts on the visual effects here?
So this is the only part that I absolutely am like, I don't know.
Mm,
Um, I okay, what I really liked, I did like the alien costumes.
mm,
Um, because there are actual alien costumes, and of course we're putting glow and things over it, and
mm,
we're overlaying. But like when they were in the cocoon and you actively saw what the alien looked like without, uh, it was beautiful. And
mm,
oh, that just, even though that was a dying, desiccated one,
mm,
that was absolutely beautiful. But I gotta say, I mean, the heaviest part of it are the alien effects and then the spaceship itself.
mm.
I don't know if it was worthy of the Oscar. For me, that year it went up against your young Sherlock Holmes,
Oh, yes.
and that one scene with the glass knight to
Yeah,
me is still
yes.
absolutely beautiful for early tech. Cocoon is nice. The flying effect is cool, but I don't feel that it's anything special. Does it add to the story? Let's take the Oscar away for a minute. Let's just in
Hmm.
general. Does it do its job in telling the story, pretty well? Yeah, I do think it does. The use of the glow effect was done. Uh, I'm not going to say sparingly because it's used a lot,
Hmm.
but it was used at the right points. It never felt like JJ does with lens flare. It never felt like it was too much.
Oh, I see. Yeah.
Yeah. But the stuff with this spaceship, I was like, and the pulling of the boat into, I was like,
Mm.
that's not gonna. And then the ending shot, I didn't like the ending shot either.
Mm.
I thought it was a little mixed.
Yeah. It was an interesting year because we also had Back to the Future that year.
But it wasn't nominated for best visual
Yeah,
effects.
which is interesting.
Only three films were Return to Oz, Young Sherlock Holmes, and Cocoon.
Yeah, I think I'd agree with you on Young Sherlock Holmes.
Yeah, I mean, Oscar wise, I think it should have won that.
Return to Oz had some really weird special effects. But it was the 80s, and that was sort of the time. Lisa, what do you think about the visual effects here?
I don't know. I think they were honestly a bit simplified.
Mhm.
I know for their time they were probably a little bit more, but even for their time they were a bit simplified, I think.
Mm. Yeah, definitely a product of its time.
Mhm.
The 80s had some very interesting experimentation with visual effects. We
But
saw
I
some
think
really good ones, and we saw some really.
right, but I think like Chris said, the alien that you saw without all the glowy was
Mm,
beautiful, absolutely gorgeous.
yeah.
Beautiful work. But the the other shots just almost seemed too much.
Yeah, maybe a less is more approach would have been better.
I mean, some glow, yeah, but not as much as they had. It almost seemed too much.
Yeah, I went a little bit maybe heavy on that. Yeah.
And we are talking here, what are we at? 40 years? Yeah,
Yeah,
40 years.
40 years exactly.
So I just wanted to do a little math. 17.5 million is what it costs to make this movie.
Okay.
I was just curious. There it is. Okay. What would that look like today? I'm curious. Today,
What kind of budget we got?
It would be about $51.6 million movie.
It's a fairly low budget for a sci-fi
That's a
film.
very low budget movie for sci-fi. And for them to be able to do what they did on that kind of budget is impressive. So I won't take that away from them.
Yeah.
But at the end of the day, you have to measure what's out there based on what's out there, not how much it costs compared to everything else. It is what it
Right.
is.
Yeah.
And when you have things like Oscars, happening, they're going to do the same thing. And so I look at this and I get what you did. They're not terrible,
No.
but there are some cracks here. There are a
Mhm.
couple things where I'm like, I think you could have done this a little better. I think,
Particularly in the year that gave us Legend and Back to the Future,
Right.
Yeah.
which I think have superior visual effects
Oh yeah.
to this. I mean, Legend particularly. Particularly with makeup, which I don't want to go off topic, but Mask shouldn't have won Best Makeup. It should have gone to Legend. That's just my opinion. But anyhow, going back to this movie, yeah, the visual effects have that real kind of 80s cheese to them, which I actually find kind of delightful just because of the time. But regardless, I think they end up adding to the movie rather than subtracting. And that's really the test of visual effects in any
Right.
movie. So that brings us to the end of Cocoon. And I turn the helm back over to Captain Ingle.
Thank you. Yeah, this was a lot of fun. And in the future, won't be this year, but we may look at the sequel. There is a sequel. I'll admit it. It's not as good, but I have more memories of that one. I saw that one so many more times. And the cast does return, most of them. So, we can take a look at that. But I want to thank Lisa for joining us today and taking a chance on this with me. I had made her sit at her computer for 2 hours to watch it. Oh, but Lisa, got any final thoughts?
No, I thoroughly enjoyed it.
All right. It's awesome. Anyway, next week. Next week we go back to the norm, but it's not really the norm because we're going into TNG and we're going to be taking a look at the absolute classic of a banger in TNG, Yesterday's Enterprise.
Oh, yes.
I love that episode so much. And we may get a guest. That is a landmark episode.
Indeed.
That has many, 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 many repercussions.
Oh, very much so.
So many. One of them in which, and we'll talk about it, I'm mad that the games have expanded more on, but we haven't had more of one specific character in
Yes.
other Star Trek episodes.
I think I know who you're talking about.
Mm-hmm. Maybe we'll see. Anyway, no, I was trying to make a bad pun.
Oh, bad pun.
Oh, it's awful. But yes. All right, Brennan, where can the people find you?
You can find me on Blue Sky at whatever the is it brendanmar.bluesky.social, whatever the I'm still getting used to it. It's very strange.
Yeah.
You can also find me on X. I'm still there at Brennan Mystical. And on YouTube, Apple, and Spotify at Page Turners They Were Not.
And you will find me on Twitch and Twitter at cingle1984. But as always, we end every episode, Kapla, and live long and prosper.
Peace and long life.